Alright, so 2-minute Tanya tidbit for today. So, like we explained last week, today's portion is a portion for Shabbos and the year that Tanya was divided. Therefore, it's the entire chapter 16 in today's Tanya. Now, the Rebbe is coming based on what we explained in the previous chapters, that a Beit has to struggle in order to serve God. He has to be able to battle the challenges which come into his life. Now, the Rebbe starts off today's Tanya by saying there's a big rule which a Beit has to know. Your main job, the main service of God, is that you need to be able to overrule and overcome the challenges which come up in the left side of your heart. The right side and also your mind need to be able to be in control and overpower anything which can come. How do you do that? Through thinking about God's greatness. As when a person thinks about God's greatness, he can come to have a certain connection with that idea. He has a das in God's greatness. Now will come that he'll have an actual feeling of fear in his heart. He'll have a fear for God, which will cause that he'll be careful to do all of the mitzvahs of Hashem, whether they're D'Oraisa, originally from the Torah, or they're D'Rabbanan from the sages, or even things which are less than that, a small little thing, a small diktuk from the Chachamim. Also, you're fully careful to do because you don't want to go against God. And also, you have a feeling of love in your heart, that you totally want to connect to God. You're yearning to God, and that's going to cause that you're going to want to do all the mitzvahs in order to be able to connect to Him, and of course to be able to learn Torah, as that's the best way to connect to Him. And the Alter Rebbe now says there's also a second rule which a person has to know, and the second rule is that even if you don't necessarily feel the feelings right away in your heart, and you're not able to get your heart to really have the feelings for God, that you should actually feel that you should have a yearning and a thirst to be able to connect to God. You don't have that revealed sense in your heart. And Alter Rebbe adds in a note here, the reason for this is not because it's anything that you're doing wrong, but rather it could be the level of the soul that you have. As in the spheros above, there's the different concepts, the different levels. Some are able to actually come to be revealed, and some get stuck in a way of ibor, like a pregnancy where it's above and in there, but it's not actually able to be revealed in a clear sense. Now, Alter Rebbe continues in the actual Tanya that this is the idea over here, that even if you actually think about it in your mind and you fully understand God's greatness and you fully understand everything that you can, and your mind intellectually totally wants to connect to God, and he understands that God is the ultimate and you really want to have a connection to that, and not only is it in your mind, in your neshama, but even in your nefesh and ruach, the lower parts of you, you realize that this is really what's fitting for you. This is really what you want, that you should have a connection to God, that you should be able to yearn and cleave to God, that you should be totally one with Him. They also want to go out of themselves, and they also want to connect themselves to God. And they're not able to connect themselves fully to God because they're trapped in a body. And this body doesn't fully understand godliness. They're like a widow whose husband ran away, meaning the husband could still be alive so they can't get remarried, but they're trapped. They have no way to connect to God. The only way to connect to Him is through His Torah mitzvahs. And therefore this is what they want as well. They want to be totally one with Hashem, to totally cleave to Hashem and fully be one with Him. And if the person has these thoughts in his mind, and it's expressed in his mind properly that he actually wants it, and fiv v'libay shavin, that his heart has these feelings, at least intellectually he has these thoughts, and his mouth follows through with that he actually speaks the words of Torah, and the rest of his limbs of his body as well will do the mitzvahs, and they're fully connecting to God. That's the way that he's cleaving to God. So even though these thoughts are only intellectual and their feelings are not able to express themselves in the heart, still they're what causing you to be able to do the mitzvahs. So then they're just like actual feelings of love and fear in your heart, because that's what's actually causing you to serve Hashem. If not for the fact that you had these thoughts, you wouldn't be serving Hashem right now. And therefore these thoughts about God's greatness are what's causing you to do the Torah mitzvahs, so they're able to pick up the mitzvah to a higher level, just like the actual love and fear for Hashem would do. As you wouldn't be coming to do these Torah mitzvahs if not for that. Even if somebody who naturally likes to learn, and he enjoys learning, but still a person naturally prefers to just do bodily things, to do physical things. So the fact that you're coming to learn is only because you have these intellectual ideas of feelings for God. That's also energizing enough, and therefore that's enough to pick up the Torah mitzvahs as well to a higher plane. And with this we can understand the statement that the Chachamim say that machshava teva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. If someone has a good thought, God connects it to an action. Now seemingly, if the Chachamim's point were to say that God considers it like you did it, it should have said Mala alav akasav ki lo asa. Torah considers it like you did it. But that's not what it says. It says Hashem connects it to an action. What does this mean? This means that generally when a person has feelings for God, those feelings are what's able to be the wings to elevate the Torah. Because a heart is kind of an in-between action versus intellect. As intellect is something which is spiritual, it's something which is fully connecting to God, as opposed to actions are totally removed from that. The heart is in between, where on one hand it's able to feel and get excited about things spiritually, but on the other hand it's something which is a physical limb, just like the rest of the limbs of the body. So when a person does Torah and mitzvahs with the feelings in his heart, the heart is able to be the middleman to connect the Torah and mitzvahs to a higher plane. However, if a person only has the thoughts, seemingly it shouldn't be able to connect it, because the thoughts are much higher than the actions. So the thoughts seemingly aren't able to lift up the Torah mitzvahs. But this is the chiddush of this Gemara, that Hashem will connect your thoughts to the action. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa, your machshava teva. Your fact that you have these thoughts about God's greatness, and now is what's pushing you to do Torah mitzvahs, Hashem will connect that to the action, that it will also be the wings for Hashem to be able to pick up these Torah mitzvahs that you had. And that's why it's called a machshava teva. It's a good thought, because it's not actual feelings in your heart. You don't actually feel it, but Hashem has this thought that you person has. Hashem will lift that thought that you have, meaning the intellectual concept of God's greatness, to a higher world as well, that it should also be able to elevate it to a higher world. And here the Alter Rebbe adds a footnote, and he explains that this is what it says in the Zohar. Now the Zohar says that Tvuna is the letters of Ben and Bas. What does that mean? That Tvuna, meaning this intellectual concept that a person understands God and greatness, is the source for a Ben and Bas. So as Ben and Bas is a love and fear, but that's able to be replaced by Tvuna, by these intellectual ideas. Now, normal system of creating a love and fear is through the concept that it starts off in a brain, you understand God's greatness, but it comes through the feelings in order to lead a person to do an action. But over here, a person is going straight from the intellect to go straight to doing an action. So the intellect is replacing the normal feelings that a person has in order to cause him to do the action. And going back to the inside, therefore Hashem will take this thought and connect it to the mitzvah, meaning he will also be able to pick it up to the world of Bria, which is the level where a person is able to connect to Hashem by using his feelings, which he created through his intellectual understanding of God's greatness, and does mitzvahs with those energy. Now, even if a person doesn't come to this tevuna, he doesn't fully understand God's greatness, it will still go to the world of Yitzira, which is a little bit lower, but it also goes up through the natural love which every person has naturally in his heart for Hashem, as will be explained in later prakim. It's the end of today's chapter. See you next time.